It is time to start quilting the Quilt Along quilt. Hi there and welcome to a new video on the Sugaridoo channel. Today my friend over here, my Bernina 770, and I are going to start quilting the Quilt Along quilt. So the quilt that we made for the Sugaridoo Bernina Quilt Along, I'm going to quilt it, and actually I'm a little bit nervous to start quilting it, but the only way to get it done is to start. So what I have done to prepare is that I have some items over here I'm going to show you, and after that I guess we're just going to hop on. So this mini series on quilting, this one with rulers and a little bit of free motion quilting, is going to be in 3 parts. So I'm going to start out with quilting the 4 center rows in this video. I'm just going to show you what design I'm using. I'm not going to show you the whole quilting because that's going to take a while. But yeah, I'm going to show you what designs I'm doing and showing you how I do that on my machine. And a little introduction in this video on what tools I'm using and what to think of when you set up your machine for ruler work. And then in the next 2 videos I'm going to do the other 4 and 4 rows, and then we have all 12 rows of the quilt quilted. Yeah, so today we have to set up the machine to start doing some ruler work, and the things I have laying over here are gloves. I love to use gloves that are a little, these little bubbles, knobs are a little bit sticky. So these are gloves that I got with a quilting magazine a long time ago. But quilting gloves, they prevent your hands from slipping over the fabric, and that makes it easier to quilt, because the more friction you have on your hands, the less you have to hold and grab and strain. Tension your fingers and your arms and your shoulders with that. So the more relaxed you can stay during quilting, the better it is. So these ones help. And for the same non-slippery stuff, I use Grippy. That is a spray that you can spray on your rulers. So I've just sprayed a few of my rulers, another thing that we need today. So I'm going to use the Bernina ruler kit, and that has all these cool rulers. So today I'm going to use a few of them. So there is this one with those waves, small waves and bigger waves. A very nice one that has just straight edges. And this one has a curve, few curves. So very versatile rulers. And then there's also this set of circle rulers and a set of oval rulers. So depending on what rulers you have, just follow along with what I'm making on the quilt, or think of some design for yourself that you want to make. But for the non-slippery, I spray a little bit of Grippy on a ruler, and that makes the surface less smooth. So when you place that on your fabric, it's not going to slide over as much. It's just going to stay there. So that also helps. The more grip you have with your ruler, with your gloves, the less pressure you have to put on. So we have rulers, we have quilting gloves, a ruler foot. I am using this Bernina ruler foot, and that is something that fits my machine. So if you have a different type of machine, ask go to the website of the manufacturer, or look at what kind of ruler foot you need, because I believe for every almost every machine there should be a ruler foot available. But this is a 72 Bernina ruler foot, adjustable in height. I'm going to show you in a second how I set up my machine and set up the height of the ruler foot. But that is something that you will need. And also, if you want to start with rulers, you have thicker and thinner rulers, and that has to do with your machine being a low shank, high shank machine. That is something you just have to figure out by I guess googling your machine, asking the store where you bought your machine if they can help you with advice on that, to get the rulers that match your machine. So yeah, the risk with rulers is that when you use a thin ruler, it could slip under your foot, and that is very messy, because then your needle is going to break the ruler and it's going to be awful. So yeah, that's why these rulers are, I think they are 1/4 inch. Yeah. So these rulers, Bernina rulers, are about 1/4 inch, and they go perfectly with my ruler foot. But matching that for a different machine, you'll have to do some more reading up on that. Also, I am not super experienced with ruler work, with free motion quilting. I love to do it, and I love to learn more about it and get more experience. But I'm also just starting out, so I have done some ruler work, I've done free motion quilting, but I'm still learning. So if you want some tips and tricks from someone that is way more experienced than me, please hop over to the YouTube channel by Angela Walters, because she just hosted a ruler work quilt along, and that's awesome because she has some live Q&A sessions recorded on her YouTube channel. And lots of videos using different types of rulers, giving so many tips and tricks. So if you want more in-depth information from someone having so much experience with quilting, make sure to hop over to Angela Walters' YouTube channel. I learned tons from her, so yeah, really do check that out if you want to learn more. What else do we need? We have the ruler foot, rulers. Oh yeah, here I have a test piece, and I just have this in my box with rulers, and whenever I set up my machine for ruler work, then I just take this out and do some sketching, or do some, it's kind of sketching, do some trial runs with my machine on a test piece. And this is just 2 pieces of fabric with some batting in between, like my quilt, but then just a test piece. So I can really recommend first trying out on a test piece to see, practice a little bit with your stitch length, to see if your tension is correct, to check if the bottom side is looking good. Yeah, so that I have over here, and then I have over here a few sheets of paper. And what I did was I enlarged the rows of the quilt and I printed it out so I could sketch on them. And I will put this also in the Bernina blog post, so it will be a coloring page with these designs supersized, so that you can try sketch out what you want. So for this quilt I thought, let's make all those shapes pop and quilt around them. Yeah, so maybe that's going to be a lot of work because you have to do a lot of echoing around the shapes, but I think that would be cool, so I'm just going to give it a go. So what I figured out for the yellow row is I'm going to do kind of straight lines with a little loop every now and then, and I'm just going to go around the yellow lines. Well, let me see, here I have quilted 2 of those lines. You can see them over here, so those are pretty close together. I want to have my quilting a little bit further apart on the actual quilt because I don't want the quilting to be too dense. Then the quilt is going to feel a little bit stiff. So I'm going to keep the quilting lines nicely spread out. And then with the orange row, I'm going to go for kind of like a brick design behind the hashtags. And that is going to look a little bit like this. And also here, these lines are pretty close together, and I just have to see how that's going to be on the row. Maybe make them a little bit further apart. So that's my idea for those two rows. Then the other two rows that I'm going to do are these two. For the arrows, I want to do some wavy lines going in between the arrows. And for this row, I haven't figured it out yet, so that one I still have to decide, but I'm first going to do the other three. Don't have to do exactly what I'm doing, I'm just playing around, showing you some ideas of how you could quilt your quilt, and I guess we should have a little bit of fun with quilting and see it as a practice. Even though it's a beautiful finished quilt and you've worked on it for a whole year, when you're new to quilting and it's maybe your first quilt that you're going to quilt, see it as learning. So it doesn't have to be perfect, because when it should be perfect the first time, we're never going to start, because that's scary, a scary thought that it should be perfect, and it's very hard to make it perfect. So lower the standards a little bit for yourself, so that you can talk yourself into, I can do this. I still have to give myself a little pep talk too. I was procrastinating on filming this video. Yeah, so it's kind of still feel scary even though it's not your first quilt. So lower the expectations a little bit, try just to have fun and get some more experience, because I'm sure that when I finish these 12 rows doing ruler work, I have learned tons of using rulers. I'm sure of that. So I'm looking forward to making those final stitches on the quilt, and I'm looking back on those 12 rows and see what I've learned and what is improved along the way. Yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to set up my machines, give you some guidance on what to look for on your machine and what to do, and then we're going to start quilting. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is to place my ruler foot in here. So I'm just going to remove this foot, and what you may heard and what I didn't show is I removed this one. That is my top transport. Then this one is just going to slide on as a normal foot. I'm going to put it in place with this little hook. So yeah, that's all there is to it to place the ruler foot. And then with this one you can lower it and make it higher. Yeah, so that's the installing of the ruler foot. And now something else you need to do is to lower your feed dogs, if that is possible, on your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and lower my feed dogs. That is a button on the side of my machine over here. So I'm just going to lower it by pressing that. And then the feed dogs are lowered, and what that means is that these ones, they help direct your fabric in that direction, so to the back of your machine. But when I'm doing ruler work, I want to move in all directions, so that's why they should be lowered. If you have a machine where you cannot lower your feed dogs, when I first started out with my very first quilts, I was sewing on a super old machine that wasn't ready to do quilting, I guess. That wasn't really made for doing quilting. But There I put over a little plastic sheet, a thick plastic sheet, where I cut out the holes for the needle, and that was on top of my feed dogs so that they could not grab my fabric anymore, but just brushed against the plastic. And I set my stitch length to 0 with that machine. So that was the way I did it on a very, very old machine, but here I don't have to do anything about the stitch length. I just have to lower the V-dogs. So then I'm just going to put my test piece underneath here. And I would start sewing with the normal settings. You can see that my foot is hopping. And that could be fine, but with the Bernina there is a setting to stop your foot from hopping, which is awesome. And for that you go to the pressure of your foot. So that pressure is now set to 50. But when you bring it down, all the way down, until I believe it should be under -2, -3 or -4. So I'm just going to put down my camera and see if I can show you. So now I have it on -4, -6, -7, -8. You see my foot is going up, -15. And when I'm sewing now, this is too high, but just to give you the view, so my foot is not hopping anymore. So I can now put this at the lowest, but then there's still too much space below the foot for my taste. So I want to have it hovering over the fabric with not too much space. So now I'm just going to lower it by making it -12, -11, -10, -8, -7, -6. So depending on how thick your quilt sandwich is, you can set this. So I think I'm going to set it on -4, -3. That's good. The setting of the pressure of your foot when you make it below I think it's below -2, but just try it out on your machine. So this is how you set it for the Bernina 770. And that stops your foot from hopping. So that is all set up. Now I'm just going to check my bobbin if that is full, and then I'm going to put my quilt under the machine. Oh yeah, and what I forgot to say, but it's also a great idea, is to clean out your machine a little bit. So take out your bobbin, take off your stitch plate, clean it out, put on a new needle, and that will have you set up for quilting a new quilt. But I already did that before this video, so I'm not going to do that again today. But yeah, that's a good thing. Make your machine clean, nice and clean, and then you're ready to go. And I'm going to start with the yellow shapes. And I think I'm going to work from the left side to the right side. I have a feeling that that is nice. So I'm just going to pull my quilt carefully to this side of my machine. So I'm going to start out with the yellow one because that is one of the 4 rows in the center of the quilt. But when your quilt is well basted, then you can start where you want to start. You can just start where you would like to start in your quilt. So there we go. Here I have everything on this side inside the arm of my machine, and I didn't roll it. The previous times that I did some ruler work, I rolled up the quilt, but that made this part pretty stiff. So I'm not going to roll it, I'm just going to leave it here as it is. And also want to show you what's happening over here. So this is quite a lot of quilt that is now hanging off the table, and that will tug under here, and that will make it harder to pull it in that direction. So we want this to go as smoothly as possible. And I read a tip or heard a tip somewhere that you can put a pillow on your lap, have your quilt on top of the pillow. So that's what I'm going to do. Have your quilt on top of the pillow, and that will prevent the quilt from tucking under. So I'm working in a small area. So the area that I'm working in is from here to whoops, let me show you over here. So I'm working in a small area from here to here. So this is the space that I need to move, and that moves pretty easily now. So it's nice to have it on my lap. This is movable, and then this should as well be movable. So just position it like so. Yep, I can move it around pretty easily. So time to put on my gloves, and then let's start a little bit of stitching. There we are, all set up for the first stitches. And I'm going to move from this side all the way to that side of the quilt. And I think to keep the first line somewhat horizontal, I'm going to focus on this line, because these blocks and these blocks are all the same height. So I figured when I have a line on my ruler that I can put on that seam and follow that one, and then reposition it to that side. Then it's going to stay somewhat horizontal. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. And the pattern that I'm going to do is a kind of a loop-de-loop, but then straight. So going to zoom in a little bit to give you the best view. And then continue straight. What do you think? I think that looks nice. Oh, and I'm going to set my needle in a needle down position, so that when I stop, that my needle is there. Yeah, so then I can go all the way from this side to the other side of the quilt. Repositioning my ruler often. Getting the hang of things a little bit. Because I have to practice a little bit on how fast I want to go. Here you see that my stitches are not super small, but I think they look good. Just going to check the back. Those stitches on the back also look good, so I'm happy with that. And yeah, I think I can continue making the quilt like this. So it's nice to reposition often, because then you can have your hands close to your foot. That makes it easier to move around and steer everything. This little yellow shape is a bit bigger than the other ones. So now I'm going to do a little bit of free motion, because I want to follow the shape and not go through it. So I'm just going to sew until the shape and then treble stitch around the shape where I've already stitched. guess until here. Yep, and then continue. I have a new guideline. And then to the side. So here you see the quilted lines from the first part of this row. Soft lines quilted pretty far away from each other. And I like how this looks. I like the soft look. Here you can see that I started a little bit higher, but then decided no, I also want those little loops below. So I just made an extra line over here. Yeah, I like how it looks. And that is the very first row of the Quilt Along Quilted. Now it's time for the second row, and I'm going to quilt the hashtag row. And for this I thought of a design with a kind of a brick pattern behind the hashtags, but I am just going to echo around the shapes and then make some extra rectangles or squares inside. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to echo around it with a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to place my ruler on the line and then from here to there. So the foot, the needle is in the center of the ruler foot, and that is a 1/4 inch from the edge. So when I have my ruler on the edge of my shape, the line is going to be a 1/4 inch from the hashtag. So here are the wavy lines that I made around the arrows, and because I'm not going through the arrows, you can see that these ones are pretty far away from each other. So maybe I'm going to echo a few of the wavy lines when I've done the whole row. But I like how it looks over here. And for quilting wise, this is going to be enough. I mean, the quilt is not going to fall apart when you don't quilt them, but these lines are much closer together than this, so maybe I can echo a few of the lines. But I do like how it looks. It's pretty wrinkly, but yeah, the wavy lines I like. Now one more row to go. And then there was this fourth row that I wanted to quilt. On forehand I couldn't decide on a design, but then when I looked at the blocks I thought it would be nice to make some squiggly lines, and then using the ruler to make some lines around the blocks. Yeah, so quite happy how it turned out. So it feels weird to show you, but this is just honestly how it looks. So I also have lines that are not straight and not perfect, and here my stitches are bigger than here, but when I would not show you, then it would give a different impression of that it looks good, because when it does look good, but that it would look perfect, and I don't think there is such thing as perfect quilting unless you let a computer do it, because when you look at it from a distance, or when you have it on your bed, or when you have it on your couch, you will not see this. So I could say, oh, I'm not happy with this because here is a line that is off, or over here this wavy line, it is a little bit, I don't know, maybe I was pulling my quilt because it was tucked underneath my quilting table. It's not going to be perfect. Over here this line is going inside the green, but I didn't want that, but it just happened. But it's okay because all of these stitches will improve my stitching. So I'm pretty happy with how these wavy lines look. The stitches are pretty regular and shapes look nice, and I guess continuing making these really helps me practice. So it does feel, I don't know, a little bit weird to show you my imperfect stitches, because of course I want them to be as good as I can get them. Yeah, so showing something that is not perfect, it's difficult also for me, but I think it's good to do that because that is just the way it looks, and yeah, that is not a reason to not make the quilt. So I love quilting. I have some experience with rulers, some experience with free motion quilting. I'm not super experienced, so I'm still learning. Yeah, and you can see that in my quilting, but it is a lot of fun. So when you let go of it having to be perfect, oops, that was my mom calling. Where was I? Not sure. something about perfection, letting go and enjoying the quilting. Yeah, so that's the most important part. Let go of how it's supposed to look, how computerized stitches look, because this is handwork. Even though I'm doing it on a machine, there's no stitch regulation on the ruler foot, so yeah, it just looks the way it looks, and the process is awesome to make this, to get closer to finishing the quilt. So yeah, I hope you're going to have a lot of fun trying out quilting, or maybe you're super experienced and you've already finished your quilt along quilt, but if not, and if this is one of your first quilts, allow yourself to practice, because that creates the most happiness. And I guess that is super important, especially in these times, that we allow ourselves to have fun and letting go of perfection. Yeah, I'm happy with it, and I am happy with where this is going. I'm going to finish my rows, and next week I'm going to do 4 other rows. See you then. Bye.